Once a strong, thriving city, the walls of Frostvellir now just keep the howling winds at bay.
If you're looking for a fast-paced game that'll test your reflexes and boost your ego, the Banner Saga may not be for you. Its turn-based combat is deliberate and often brutally difficult, so failure is common. You'll make choices that determine the fate of your group, and most of the decisions you make will be wrong. It requires a lot of thought and almost seems like work. But all that work is largely worth it. The Banner Saga is an inspired world of snow, old gods, and battle axes. Putting the Viking theme front and center are the Varl, fearsome warrior giants with horns not on their helmets, but on their foreheads. Part killing machine, part old grouch, these mythic beings reluctantly share the world with humans. But there are problems with this world. The sun is stuck in the sky, the gods are rumored to be dead, and stone golems known as the Dredge have invaded your lands. These mindless killers are the driving force of Banner Saga's story. Their attack triggers a two-sided tale that manages to trade back and forth between the two stories, featuring a few interesting characters. One centers on a Varl military expedition combating the Dredge, the other follows a caravan of refugees fleeing the invasion.
I never expected to see the Dredge with my own eyes.
Both parts of the story have players managing a caravan as it crosses hostile country. It's a bit like Oregon Trail, but without the hunting or cholera deaths. Instead, you'll be presented with multiple-choice choose-your-own-adventure style decisions. Most often, you'll be managing your supplies, which are constantly on the verge of running out. Do you use precious supplies to boost the caravan's morale? Do you leave starving people to die or give them food, knowing that you're likely to run out before you reach your next town? There are often no right answers to these questions, and the consequences of your actions can be impossible to foresee. The game has no problem stabbing you in the back for being kind-hearted. These decisions are even harder because the currency you use to buy supplies is also used to buy items and training for your warriors. At times it feels downright unfair, but the hardships endured motivate you to care about the characters and build a story you'll want to see through to the end. Ideally, you'll end up with 6 well-developed warriors on a side, and fighting is much more complicated than simply standing next to your enemy and wailing away. Simply attacking an enemy outright will slowly bleed away their health, but if you wear down their armor, subsequent attacks will more easily cut into your enemy's strength. Strength is both health and attack power. A unit's strength not only determines how much damage they can take, but how much they can dish out. If you only focus on wrecking an opponent's armor, you'll risk eating a full power attack when they get their turn. Players must constantly make decisions about who to attack and how much to soften them up before going for blood, then seize the proper moment to cripple or kill your foe. There's a lot of nuance here. You'll move your characters one at a time, but since each side gets an equal number of turns no matter the size of their roster, killing a weak enemy really just gives the other side more chances to attack with their powerful characters. With this in mind, one tactic is to attack enemies until they're just a few strength points from death, then move on to another target. Since strength is both health and attack power, these walking wounded take up a turn, but can only do trivial damage. It's a good thing there are a few tricks like this players can use, because once the tutorials are over, the game isn't shy about giving players real challenges in combat, with some battles really bordering on unfair. Mercifully, characters that fall in combat aren't dead and buried, they're merely injured and can come back as good as new with a few in-game days of rest. If you do lose a battle, the game doesn't make you replay it over and over. Instead, the story continues, incorporating the loss into the storyline. Finally, there's an easy difficulty for those who just want to crush their enemies without undue frustration. Prevailing in combat is certainly more exciting and satisfying than the blind decisions you make while guiding your caravan, so it's important to point out that the game's tactical battles have been spun out in a free-to-play multiplayer component called Banner Saga Factions that really shows off the depth of the game's combat. Still, the single-player story gives combat a much-needed context and is worth experiencing. And you can always go back to Factions if you're still thirsting for blood. The Banner Saga isn't what you'd strictly call fun. Instead, it's interesting and challenging, more like a chess match than deathmatch. But there's an incredible satisfaction when you take on a gang of armored monsters that by all rights should trample you, yet you're able to hamstring their health and line them up for execution. It's also comforting to know that although you can't outfight a towering Varl, perhaps you can outthink him.